Transportation in geography is the process of movement of the sediment from one area to another by the water. Now, looking at coasts, this is where we see the waves move sediment down along the beach. We've looked at the 4 types of transportation of traction, saltation, solution and suspension, but now we're going to look at a process known as longshore drift. So longshore drift is the movement of sediment along the shoreline, and it drifts there by the waves. So let's take a look at the diagram. So we want to start our longshore drift by drawing a line for our diagram straight across like so, and this separates our beach from our sea. So I'll just add some labels up here: beach, sea. Perfect. Now, what we need to think about is we need to think about how we get this pebble here, which I'll label in red as X, how this could possibly end up moving all the way down to the other end. Okay, now why this happens is it happens because of the prevailing wind. I'm going to use blue for these arrows. Our prevailing wind generally comes in a southwesterly direction, which means in the UK it blows from the southwest. So I'll mark that on my diagram here with this nice blue arrow down in the bottom left corner. So the prevailing wind pushes the waves up the shore. Now I'm going to switch to a nice light blue here. It pushes the material up the shore, and these waves come in at an angle like so. Now this is something that we term the swash. So the swash is these waves pushing their way up the beach at this angle, and this moves material up the shoreline. The pushing of material up the beach by the waves. So down here we can see our label of swash. What then happens is gravity takes over, and using a black arrow, I'll show this going down, and it brings and drags, and the waves drag this back using this dotted line. It drags the material back into the sea at 90 degrees. So it drags it straight back down, and this is called backwash. So the backwash is the movement of sediment back down the beach due to the force of gravity. So due to gravity, material is dragged back down the beach. Nice and simple. And that is known as backwash. And this continues the entire time. So we constantly see our swash and our backwash happening. It keeps moving up, and you see it starts to move in this zigzag pattern, this back and forth, kind of almost like a saw or a sawtooth. And we see this material being dragged back down by the waves and under the force of gravity, being pushed back up at an angle, being dragged back down at 90 degrees, being pushed back up at an angle by the swash. So this is where we see our longshore drift occurring. This entire process along here, in a nice dark green hopefully, nice light green instead, never goes to plan, is our longshore drift. It's the movement of sediment along. So we'll see this rock here, so X, being pushed up the beach, dragged back down. So there it is, being pushed back up the beach, being dragged back down, being pushed back up, dragged back down, being pushed back up. And that's actually how we can see the X moves from over here at point 1 all the way to the other end of the beach at point 2. Now a reminder of some key terms. Our prevailing wind is our most common wind direction, and longshore drift is the movement of this sediment along the shoreline. So this arrow here represents our longshore drift. The movement of sediment along the shoreline due to the processes of swash and backwash. It helps if you can spell. Doesn't stop you if you can't. We get there in the end. There we go. And you can see it moving all the way along. Hopefully that's helped you understand the process of longshore drift. So taking, for example, the next time you go to the beach, once this is all over, if you look, you'll see the sediment all the way down one end of the beach, and you can see this has happened due to the process of longshore drift, and this causes some depositional landforms, which we are going to talk about next lesson.